Hello, everybody. The board members are running 15 minutes late. They apologize, but they'll be upstairs.
and it's 7:17, and all that is very late, and I apologize for keeping you waiting, so thank you for your patience. I'll call the regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:17 p.m. Please call the roll.
Ms. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Rollins?
Here.
Ms. McCall?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Here.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Ms. Haley?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now take a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we start each board meeting, it bears reminding that the mission of the Rockford Public Schools is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education for a changing world. Before we go any further, thank you, Kathy Bayer Everly, who is working behind the scenes to produce the board's broadcast via YouTube live stream and Comcast Channel 20. I also wish to welcome the Superintendent Student Advisory Council representative, Aisha Nizamuddin. Better? Getting better? From Auburn High School. So thank you for being here again, and this is another listening session for you, and then we get to listen to you at the last one in the month. We're now going to celebrate the Rockford Public Schools. Whitehead Elementary School will now share how this year their school has undergone changes. So if you come to the podium, and I'm going to guess you'll have to turn on the mic.
Okay, all right. So I am Paula Randall. I am the principal at Whitehead Elementary. And this is Mallory Sage. She is our 3rd grade teacher, also Golden Apple winner. So she is currently working on her doctoral program, and I'll let her speak more about that in a little bit, but she brought this idea to us of this concept of Whitehead Nurtures, which is a trauma-informed school-based counselor. Oh, I can click. I'm new to this. Maybe. Is it turned on? I don't know. Oh, yep. Now we're cooking. Thank you. So not all members of our team could be here tonight, but myself, you have Mallory, and then over there we have my assistant principal, Julie Skaggs, Renee Goosey, who is our instructional coach, and Anita Hughes, who is our Title I teacher. And this kind of made up the team that decided that we were going to take on this challenge. Because we're short on time, we're just going to go for a few little highlights. So we are a bilingual school. We have 46.2% of our students are English language learners. We also have a very high percentage of low income. I'm not sure that that accurately reflects that. And as you keep going, we've got chronic absenteeism, our overall attendance, truant, and all of those issues play a factor in our children's education, because obviously if kids aren't at school, they cannot learn. And so when we dug down deep, we realized that a lot of families are suffering from different trauma-related things, which is impacting their ability to get their children to school. So Whitehead Nurtures was an idea we all came up with that's a multi-tiered approach to social-emotional learning and trauma intervention. It is all based around a 3-tiered pyramid that Mallory will go into details here, but as you can see, each tier grows as you get towards the bottom, so subsequently you want most of your kids in Tier 1, a smaller chunk in Tier 2, and then your most neediest students are in Tier 3. All right.
Okay, so this idea was really born out of the fact that in order for students to achieve academically, we need to support their mental health and we have to support their social and emotional learning. I really feel that's the foundation of learning for our students, and if we're not meeting those needs, all the academic support we're providing is just not going to get through. So we really need to take care of the whole child, and especially in the elementary school, we're really lacking in mental health supports for our students. So as I spent almost 2 years ago now, I did a whole year of kind of researching, reading studies, looking at what are other schools across the country doing to meet these needs. And honestly, there's a big gap in literature in this area. There's not a lot of, especially elementary schools, providing the support that's needed for our students in the elementary level. So through that research and through talking to all these fabulous ladies when we came together as a team, the research showed that a multi-tiered system was the best system. I was very fixated on the idea of a counselor. We need a counselor in our building, and that was necessary, but research showed that just the counselor wasn't enough. We needed to have a multi-tiered approach to meeting the needs of all of our students. So tier 1, this is for our whole school. What we did is we brought in the ROE. We developed a partnership there. We're now a trauma-informed school. Our administration went through a whole process with them to become certified as a trauma-informed school. The ROE has come in multiple times this year to provide our staff training with trauma-informed practices and SEL practices. We've added more curriculum for SEL and books in our classroom libraries and our Whitehead library, and we've also put calm corners in each of our classrooms, so that way we're really meeting the needs of all of our students in the class day to day. So tier 1, just like academic, it works for a lot of students. It doesn't work for all students. So we need tier 2. This is group counseling. So our students are identified by teachers. There's a process where they'll refer students to the nurtures team. Because I'm studying this for my dissertation, I'm not a part of that, just so it's ethical. So that goes to our administration and some other members of the team that look at the needs of the child and if they could benefit from group counseling. They then are placed with our school counselor, our social worker, our behavior interventionist, or our parent liaison, and they're pulled out twice a week for 30 minutes to work on social skills. And we've seen a lot of really promising results with that. The kids like going to those groups, and an extra person that they're safe with, and they're learning social skills. And I want to shout out Whitehead there too, because same like our school psychologist in BIS, when they heard what we were trying to do, they readily jumped in and volunteered their time in the school day to run groups, which is awesome. And then tier 3 is for our students that group 2, the counseling in that group setting just wasn't enough. We're still seeing a lot of behavioral needs or trauma, and so they're receiving individual counseling, obviously with the parents' consent. And they're working they're working with a clinical licensed counselor. So we have a partnership with KP Counseling, and Annie Christensen is the counselor. She's amazing. She's seeing about 30 students one-on-one at this point every week, and she's also running groups and has been just a tremendous resource for our school. Skip some of this. This is important. I won't go all overly into this, but providing support for our students at an elementary level is huge, because when we can help them early in those mental health supports, hopefully it's stopping issues down the line. They have coping skills, they have practices and strategies they can put in place to help them be successful inside of school and outside of school. Okay, and then last thing, this will be studied deeply. It's a 3-year pilot program. I'm currently working on my doctoral degree, and when I'm in my dissertation year, I'm going to look at students' attendance, their academics, their behavioral data, suspensions, referrals, panorama data. Our goal as a team, and then my goal as a doctoral student, is to look at the whole child and to see how is this impacting our school, how is this impacting our students. 3 years we've picked because we want to have a large amount of time to study it. Nothing is going to show that much growth in 1 year. We need multiple years to see if this is working and to follow our kids who we're supporting with this. So if you have any questions, I know we're out of time, but please feel free to reach out. We have a 45-minute version of this presentation. If you want to come to our school, we are more than willing to give it to you. A couple of you have seen it already. So we did a very short, condensed version, but we're really proud of the work we're doing at Whitehead, and we're really excited to see where this goes.
Board members with questions? David?
My question is, what components of this are going to have some sort of longitudinal stability? And I'm hoping that this is something that will survive beyond your particular study.
So this is something that I'm funding out of my building budget. So I don't foresee that ever going away, being able to continue that. And I know some schools have reached out with interest about how we're funding it and how we can keep spreading that throughout the district.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think following this framework of the multi-tiered also provides a nice support. It's not just something random we're doing at Whitehead. It's something we can like bring to other schools and show this is how we're implementing it here, and this is how other schools could implement it as well. And the tiers allow it to have a structure, but also change depending on the need of the school. Like the topics for groups might be different from school to school or child to child. So it kind of has both sides, a structure, but also some autonomy in it.
Yep. Okay. I mean, you waited for us. You don't take a breath. And I have two questions. One is, what does it take to be a trauma-informed school?
So we had a partnership with the ROE, and basically it started with a self-assessment. We had to gather a team of 5 to 6 people at our school, and then we participated in a self-assessment that basically was a ton of questions that ran through looking at all different types of SEL within your building, all the way down to like the most minute with like security and, you know, kids feeling safe and their well-being in that sense. So once we went through that process, then we met with a member of the ROE, and we went through that whole entire survey together. We came up with a score as a group, and then we looked at a rubric based off of that and came up with a goal for our school. And then based off of that goal, we had some modules we could complete, which are available online, that we could watch at our own pace, that talked about being a trauma-informed care school. And then we also, as an extra step, it wasn't necessary, but as an extra step, we invited, her name is Heather Hall, that's kind of the person that took charge of this from the ROE. She came out and provided several different trainings for our whole staff, and we actually still have one more to complete that all centers around trauma-informed care, restorative practices, and we'd like to start diving a little deeper into the opposite side of that, where we're providing SEL support for our teachers' well-being. So we're not there yet.
So do a certain number of staff have to take all those lessons online for you guys to kind of pass and become this?
Yes. Yes.
Are there any other trauma-informed elementaries in the district that you know of? Or any schools, middle or high school?
Not that I'm aware of.
Anybody know? No? Okay. My other question was on your little rope thing here, the road. It says H&LE with care data. What does that mean? Handle with care.
Oh, yes, handle with care data.
Well, thank you. Was it meant to be all together? Oh, it's on the, so we get, this, like on here.
Oh,
on here
okay, yeah, yours is real tiny.
It says H&LE. Honest to goodness. Does
Oh,
it
no,
on
that's
yours
great.
Too? Thank you, June.
Yes, that's our handle with care data
Got it.
that took off this year.
Okay, and I see ACEs on there. Anybody else with questions? I am so excited about what you guys are doing. Thank you, and congratulations. What a joy. Thank you. Thank you for waiting for us.
Of course. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Oh, wait, Miss Pearson has her light on.
How long has this been into effect?
This was the first year. So we spent last school year, I was researching it, and then our team was meeting and developing all of this last school year. And then this school year, 22-23, is our first year that the Whitehead Nurtures is running. And our goal is to run it 3 years consecutively so we can really study the data and see if it's working. 3 years felt like a good amount of time to really follow our students. 1 or 2 years didn't feel like enough. Also, full honesty, selfishly, I'm writing my dissertation in that year 3. So that does help me as well, that I can have 3 years worth of data moving into my dissertation phase.
Yeah. And have you received any teacher and parent feedback with this program?
So what we are doing for our small groups is having teachers, if you're a teacher and one of your students goes to a small group, we've created a short survey that they take prior to them going to small group and then after them going to small group. And that's kind of some of the data that we're looking at to see, are these small groups making a difference? What needs to change? Are the topics spot on? And then the individual counseling, Annie, our counselor, she gets a lot of feedback from parents, very positive positive about how they can see the changes in their student. And not only that, she has a great rapport with the parents, and so she's able to provide them with some tools, not only to help their children, but to help themselves too. And so I think it's been a really positive relationship, and the word has kind of gotten out amongst our building, because some parents will say, like, I think you have a counselor, right? You know, we want that. And so we have to make sure, like Mallory said earlier, that we're really following a tight recommendation system, because really, I mean, everybody would want it and can benefit. So we definitely have to have a very tight recommendation system.
I think our hope as well is, as we're establishing like the importance of mental health with our students, hopefully that carries into our families as well. And I know our counselor has also worked with parents to provide referrals for their own individual counseling, or to continue counseling outside of the school day with their children, which I think is really important. And what we love about this program is there's so many people involved in it now, and continuing to make it better. Our parent liaison and kindergarten support specialist developed like a whole list of resources to give parents, where they can contact and where they can go to get resources in the community, under the umbrella of the Nurture program and nurturing the whole child. Even our counselor, Annie, today came to me and was like, I have this really good idea. What do you think if we did after school counseling next year? And what if I was able to get certified in more trauma practices? And it's just really, really encouraging to see all the people that have come alongside and believed in this program. So we're encouraged and excited by it.
And what are the demographics of the engagement in the program?
That's a good question.
So at this time, we don't have like specific data of the demographics, because we have kids fluidly moving in and out, and that's something we're going to track and look at the end of the year with the data we're asking teachers to give us feedback for. But right now, just off the top of my head, most of our students that are being seen by the counselor one-on-one are 3rd through 5th grade students, just because we as a school have learned them and understand what their needs are, and we've extinguished all of the resources we can provide them. And so then this is that natural next step. Where K2, a lot of those students, we're still trying different things with. We're still trying to get that parent support and work through those things, because, you know, this is like tier 3 when we go see the counselor individually. And so we want kids to be able to be fluid amongst those tiers.
And we do have a tier 2. I think it's almost all kindergarten group. So we do have, we're servicing the young ones. And then I will have a very nerdy spreadsheet here soon with all of that information, like age, demographic, how long they're seeing, obviously with names not attached to it, so everything's confidential. But for me and my data and my research, that will all be a part of it. Yeah.
And our counselor did just get access to Panorama, so she's been putting in a ton of information for us. So we're excited.
Thank you.
In layman terms, what is their ethnic background?
What was that? So,
What is their ethnic background?
so excuse me, and that'll be part of their survey, is what they've said.
Yeah.
So,
That is part of
not to throw numbers out there,
Yeah.
but your school was also the first one that came forward and tried providing transportation to students.
Yes.
Is that still happening? You had a
Yes.
community grant, and so you are still doing that just during the winter months, or how is that?
It just started. It was supposed to start at the beginning of the year, but they had some issues with bids. So I think it started up right a little bit after fall, like right before winter, and it's supposed to run through the rest of the year. And so that serves about 180 students additionally to our kids who are already taking a bus.
And I think that's funded through the district now, right? That's not
Correct.
Community Foundation
Right,
anymore.
but
yes.
when you first started it was through Community Foundation,
Yes,
right?
yes, that was
And then
2 years
COVID
ago.
hit.
Yes.
Great idea, and we're doing it in other schools now too.
Yep.
So, any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
Good night. So we're now at the petitions and communications portion of our meeting, where we invite the public to make comments. The board will not respond to the comments at this time. If it's appropriate, you will be contacted in a timely manner by staff. Each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board. It's not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators, or to discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such an open meeting. I'll call 2 names at a time. If you look on your left, you'll see 2 digital clocks. One shows the total time allowed to public comment, and one shows the total time for each speaker. Thank you for your interest and your cooperation with our guidelines. We have 4 speakers this evening. Nina Giangeli, you are first, and followed by Ricky Naylor.
Good evening. My name is Nina Gianangeli. I'm a Rockford resident, an educator in a neighboring district, and a member of Eliminate Racism 815 Educations Committee. I'd like to acknowledge the school district's continued efforts to hire and retain teachers and staff of color. We'd specifically like to recognize the amazing efforts of Dr. Antoine Reed in working with our community to address the urgent work of making sure that RPS staff reflects the diverse makeup of the student body. The partnerships Dr. Reed established with HBCUs is simply one example of this important work that we can't wait to see more of, and we're especially excited to see the educational talent these relationships bring to our deserving students. As we are aware from a plethora of studies across the board, a more diverse education staff means increased scores on standardized tests, better attendance rates, fewer disciplinary flares, higher graduation rates, and more students pursuing post-secondary education and training. We also know it means that all of our students will have more exposure to a wide range of perspectives, become more civically engaged, develop higher level thinking skills, grow their creative and socio-emotional skills when they have trusted, qualified educators of color guiding and facilitating their learning. We also know that there is a need for more educators of color in American schools. Over 40% of American schools do not have any non-white teachers. In 2002, 86% of Rockford Public Schools teachers were white, despite being a district where 73% of the student body are students of color. Of course, it's challenging to recruit educators of color and retain these employees across the nation. Prospective and current teachers of color need more support, better pay, better working conditions, and more mentorship from leaders in their schools. We've seen these same challenges in our district, so Dr. Reed's efforts are energizing and impactful, and we look forward to supporting and bearing witness to the marvelous outcomes that these efforts are sure to have. And certainly time that we reap these benefits, because we've been waiting for a long time. So thank you, Dr. Reed.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Reed. Appreciate that. Ricky Naylor, followed by Ann Rundle.
That clapping is for the white unity with these white administrators and these white board members. And I wish we could get that same unity with these black administrators and these black board members. We can't seem to get that. I mean, some of these administrators have been reduced to entertainers when they come to these meetings. And they make y'all laugh and stuff when it's a serious stuff that's going on. And something like that, can't continue to go on. Now, you guys keep talking about going into the community. Look around. Where the community at? You guys know, if you watch those, when they had the little sports stuff going on, those people in the community, I told them the same thing. Now, you guys would go sell out those basketball games. You went way down to DeKalb to watch a game, but you won't come down here and advocate for these students. So, to me, I'll be like saying, you know what? We just wasting time going to that community. Like I told you guys a long time ago, the backbone for the change got to come from inside this room here. And so far, there's nobody in here willing to step up and say, you know what, we got to be the backbone of the change. Because the community already told you, if they wanted some change, they'd be here. They want to go to a basketball game rather than come down here and advocate for their kids. What are you going to do about that? So, sold out basketball game, empty chairs in the board meeting. And that can't continue to go on. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take to get the community behind or whatever. So maybe, after the election, some of these other board members don't show up anymore and get some new ones in here. Maybe then something might change, because right now nothing is really changing. It's the same stuff. You guys talk, equity. We keep coming down here. Where are the rest of these black administrators at? These guys should be coming to these meetings like those teachers just did and talk about, what do you do for this district as a black administrator? What do you do?
Thank you. Ann Rundle, followed by John Brantley.
Hello. My name's Ann Rundle, and I'm representing Eliminate Racism. Behind the handout that we gave you, you'll find the flyer for the Rockford Summit on Racism that we're Eliminate Racism is hosting. And I want to thank RPS for being a co-sponsor of this event. Thank you very much. We also need participation. We need people from RPS to attend. We need representatives from the high schools. We'd love to have students part of these conversations. We'd like to have teachers. We'd like to have administrators all be part of the conversations that we'll be having that day. You know we'll all be talking about you, so I hope you're going to be there and be part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker this evening is John Tech Brantley.
Good evening, board members and citizens of Rockford, Illinois. I'm going to start out first with doing something I do at the City Hall every day. Proverbs 28, verses 27. God wants us to identify with the needy, not ignore them. The second part of this Proverbs could be restated positive. Those who open their eyes to the poor people will be blessed. If we help others when they are in trouble, they will do whatever they can to return the favor. Paul promised that God will supply all our needs. He usually does this through other people. I repeat, he usually does this through other people. What can you do today to help God supply someone's needs? First, I want to thank you for it took us 15 years with the working with the Walker School Bus. This back in 2019, I started transporting some of my kids to Lewis Family School because the parents asked me, and they gave me gas money to transport their kids. This year came the beginning of the school year. The principal came to me the second day of the school year asking could I pick up some more kids. I went from picking up my regular 5 kids to transporting 30 kids to school every day. Then all of a sudden my van went down and the radio station contacted us. We was on the radio station, we was in the newspaper, we was on the news talking about Brother John transporting the kids and then Housing Authority providing the transportation. Well now, after 7 long months, I want to thank those behind the scene, the superintendent of school, Earl Dawson Jr., Dr. Reed, and whoever else was listening to that radio station, that now we have transportation transporting more than just the 28 kids from Fairground, but more of the kids that live in Fairground will have an opportunity to get to school. I want to end by saying they talk about they never talk about the ethnic, and in order to work with the community, you have to be able to have the community to have input. What bothers me the most is that you can hire all the blacks in the world, but they fear of liability and they fear of losing their job, then they just another person. So you can talk about hiring all the minorities you want, but the ethnic...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all of you for stepping up. We're now at items that proceeded through the Performance Committee. We have one item, report and action, is the Student Code of Conduct. So is there a motion and a second to approve the 2023-2024 Student Code of Conduct?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? I see no lights, so I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We are now on to items that proceeded through the Planning Committee. After we do our vote, the administration will present 2024 budget requests that we moved from the March 7th Committee of the Whole to tonight. So I'd entertain a motion and a second to approve item 5A, which is the increase in continuous public official bond and payment of premium.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I'll give the floor to administration for the 2024 budget request presentation.
Okay, I'm the first one up tonight, so we'll have the financial services budget. These first few slides are just an overview of, our organizational structure within the department. Not going to spend a lot of time on these. And then these are the areas that we support. So, we support the budgeting, payroll, purchasing and accounts payable, the taking in of money, all of the financial reporting, for the district, the grant expenditure reporting, and then handle all the insurance claims and all the investments and cash management for the district. Not going to read all these slides to you. Really the big takeaway on this one is that second bullet point. We did maintain the ISB financial profile score at 3.8, which kept the district in recognition status for the last year, which is great. The big takeaway on this slide is the first bullet point there. Auditors noted no material findings or internal control deficiencies for the past 5 consecutive years. Obviously, these are the kind of results that you want coming out of the audit. This slide, I think really the big one is the continued collaboration with the other departments to establish and manage the internal controls on all the ESSER money. As you guys know, we've got $200+ million that's flowing through the district, over the last couple of years and then on in through, September, October, November, and December of 2024 as we finish up all the projects. So that's really the big one there. The grants have all come back, clean on audits and whatnot, so we're doing well with that. The big takeaway on this one is the budget roadshow. I think we talked about this a little bit, in the fall. We actually went out this fall and visited all 41 of the buildings and met with all the principals. And then this winter, we've actually had all the principals come in and actually sit basically at a round table and work with the principals to help them construct their budgets for next year. And at the budget roundtables, we actually had really departmental representation from everybody in the district they could need, from human resources to grants to the ed services team, to the schools team, the budget team, the accounting team. So we really did have everybody there. Big takeaway, I think, on this one, and we like to have a good thing happen once in a while, and that's the bottom one. We challenge these TRS and IMRF penalties that we get, and so far, we've resulted in $241,000 of savings to the district by challenging those penalties. So, we're probably closer to about $300,000 now. That's been a big plus for us this year. Looking at our overall budget, you can see we've got a slight increase on salary and benefits. It would have been higher with just normal wage increases, but there was a position that we did not fill last year that we had budgeted, and we are actually not going to fill that position this year, so we actually took it out of the budget for this year. We were able to do a little bit of negotiation on some of our purchase services. Also feel like we can cut back a little bit on supplies, and so overall we actually have our budgeting about $3,600 less than we did last year. As far as our contracts, you can see them there. One of the big negotiations that we did was with InTouch. That's what we do all of our student accounting software through and whatnot. We were able to get a nice reduction on that one this year. And then these are our big contracts related to the audits. Baker Tilly, which you just approved, I think at the February board meeting, that came in at $94,000 for the upcoming school year, but we were able to offset some of that increase with some savings from choosing a new actuarial firm to actually do the audit for our OPEB. As far as return on investment, for us, it's really about internal controls, gaining efficiencies, figuring out how to retain quality staff, and making sure that we're giving you guys reliable financials and giving the community reliable financials, and just really being good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. And that is it. I'll take any questions. Okay, thank you.
And now for the superintendent and board budget, a small but mighty. This is our org chart, and which you're very familiar with, and some of the highlights of what we spend dollars with our specific budget. Relatively flat in terms of cost structure here. What I do want to highlight and remind the board are some of the things that we collectively invest in through this. Our lobbying budget is the first one, that's Zephyr Strategies. The DLT group, which has 2 board members on it, which is a collaborative group with the REA. Investment in Rockford Promise and investment in Alignment Rockford are some of the highlights. The one increase diligent is our board doc software, which we use very, very regularly. And really, again, I think the return on investment does come down to making sure we are effective with governance and making those investments. And with that, I'll turn it over to our legal department.
Good evening. I'm Yashika Goldsmith, the Deputy General Counsel for the district, and I'll be presenting the legal department's budget this evening. Our department is led by our General Counsel, and it's also comprised of myself. We have an executive assistant, a staff attorney, 2 legal investigators, and a paralegal risk management officer. Our highlights include supporting the district through every aspect of its functioning, from health services to nutrition services, student services, special education, facilities, human resources. We touch every corner of the district, keeping abreast of policy and changes in laws. We use outside counsel services for matters in which other parties are represented by legal counsel, and for more complex matters such as real estate, construction, tax matters. Our legal department budget remains consistent for the most part for FY24. There is an anticipated increase with respect to salaries and benefits based on subject to board approval. Our contracts remain the same. We have our legal research contract, which is the only one for the department. Outside counsel expenditures trended up a bit last year, but are expected to trend back down this year, and we are on target to remain within that projected budget for this year. Return on investment is to continue to control risk exposure, enforce district policy and procedure, and support the district in managing its business. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jason Barthel, the Chief Information Officer for Rockford Public Schools. I will be sharing the information technology budget. As you can see here, this is an overview of our organizational structure. We have 4 departments that report to us. Here's a breakdown of each of those departments. Here's some of our technology services highlights. I won't read through every one of these, but a couple I do want to point out is with our internet redundancy and resiliency that we put into place. One of the highlights was we've been able to avoid 161 hours of internet downtime since the beginning of the school year with how we're doing internet redundancy now, which is a very, very huge feat. We had over 80 hours of downtime last year because we didn't have this in place, so this is fantastic for us. And then the rest on this is really showing the replacement and upgrades of our infrastructure from a network perspective and the life cycle planning for our Chromebooks and our student devices. On this slide, I just want to point out, really, this is for our educational technology and our continued delivery of the digital literacy continuum, and that for the classrooms and the teachers, and also using different devices as well as curriculum for coding in the classroom. This is an overall budget review for technology services. Walking through that, we had a slight increase in salaries and benefits based on the CPI adjustments. Our purchase services did have a slight increase, and that is primarily with systems monitoring and IT security software. Supplies did have a significant increase, and that is primarily because of the peripheral devices such as keyboards, mice, docking stations for our life cycle planning, that we had our multi-year budgets for 1,600 computers for staff. We last purchased in 2019 and we're due for a refresh. In our non-capital, that's actually the computer devices for that $550,000, roughly $546,000 increase, and that will be for staff devices, and we've actually got about $1 million in smart boards as well. We had a significant decrease in capital. We did quite a bit of value engineering in our multi-year projects, primarily our cell repeater project that we're on year 3 of 5 with our buildings by cutting out a particular frequency that we're doing differently going forward using our Wi-Fi network. So we're able to cut about 30% off of that project. So overall, about $469,000 more than what we looked at last year, but we did include $1.3 million that we didn't have budgeted this year last year for staff devices and $1 million for smart boards. So we're able to cut costs in our contracts. These are our IT security and backup contracts. That we have a slight increase of $166,000, primarily with our IT security agreements. That consists of several contracts. We had a slight increase there. We purchased a 4-year contract for antivirus in 2019, and we are due for a renewal on that, which is incorporated in those dollars. It's also important to note that a little over $1 million of the IT security agreements is still currently coming out of ARP ESSER. These are our student resources and remote contracts that we have. A couple points of emphasis on that is our Internet Essentials and Empower Ed hotspots. That's the internet services that we provide for our students. We are not using the paid versions. What we are doing is leveraging a government subsidized system going forward with T-Mobile, which will still be able to provide that internet access for students that need them for their homes through their Projects 10 million that they have. So we're moving forward with that without having to pay for that going forward. These are our business operations contracts that we have. Just a couple notes on that one. You'll see a significant reduction in online enrollment and registration. Last year was our first year moving forward with that. We had some development cost for custom development built into that cost. And this year going forward, we will not have that cost. These are technology development contracts. A couple of things I want to point out here. We've used a couple different firms to help us as we upgraded and done some findings and recommendations for our network and our infrastructure from 2019 forward. And our plan was to use those third-party experts to help guide us along the process and to do a knowledge transfer for our staff as they got a few more certifications and more efficient at what they're doing, and that has paid off, and we're able to reduce those contracts. As we go forward, we'll see that decrease even more and even disappear in the coming years. These are our telephony and communication contracts that we have on here. No real changes on that. We did have to do a few additional licenses for our clocks and PA systems as we pull out the old analog systems in our buildings. We do have to have a license for the new network clocks that go into those buildings. These are our compliance and reporting contracts for software. We had a big decrease in our GoGuardian web filtering, primarily for our iPads. We're using a mobile device management platform they already had, and we're able to incorporate that web filtering there. So we're saving that cost going forward. These are just some miscellaneous contracts. Our LinkedIn Learnings, primarily for our staff, to be able to continue professional development and growth for IT-related classes. And we are moving forward here in the FY24 for some additional help desk dashboards to really get some more granular reporting, so we're making sure we're meeting our standards of service for the district. Overall, we saved almost $84,000 in our contracts. These do not fall in the IT budget, but these actually fall in budgets across the district, but I felt important to share with the board a couple contracts that we have that we actually manage in the IT department but are seen across the district. One of those is our copier usage in our Marco Technologies contract. We did see a decrease in that. Last year we did have purchase costs of the actual copiers, so we're not paying for that this year. That $260,000 is an estimate for FY24. We think we'll come in under that, but that's for copies specifically. And then the AT&T FirstNet cellular contract, we saw an increase there for FY24, and that is primarily because of about 190 tablet devices that are now installed in our buses for routing and tracking that were added late last year. Return on investment is to provide secure and available technology access, application support, and dashboards and report development for data-driven decision-making. At this time, I'll open it up for any questions.
David?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, everybody. You talked about having saved the district 161 hours of internet downtime. Is there an industry standard for organizations of a particular size that say, minimizing this to or keeping it at a certain level is great? Or
so what we set as our goal is just for all of our systems, but internet as well, is 99.99% uptime, and that's based on 24/7, 365. So there's not a number of hours. You can, if you do the calculations of hours, I think that comes down to like 18 minutes in a year. But we've set that standard. It could be anywhere from 3 nines to 5 nines, depending, and it's kind of calculated based on, it's an algorithm based on the dollars you invest in particular redundancies and resiliencies.
All right, I mostly got that. The 193 copiers that are spread across the district, is that giving us adequate coverage at each of the buildings? Do we have any buildings that are like hungry for printing devices?
So prior to going out to bid last year for our contract for the new copiers, we actually sent a survey out to all the buildings because I think before this, we were at about 186 copiers to see if there was additional need, and we did go ahead and pursue those and add those into those numbers. So based on the survey and what we've pushed out, at this point, we believe we're good.
All right, great. And the last thing I had was you mentioned, I think it was on slide 38, curriculum-aligned coding experiences. I guess I just wasn't quite expecting that from the IT department. Can you explain to me what these coding experiences, the curriculum-aligned coding experiences are?
Sure. So educational technology reports through the IT department, and what we're doing a lot in class, and a lot of it is with our Legos, and we've got robots, Ozbots, and things like that. And it starts as low as, I believe, second grade, is Heidi. But at that low age, so they're learning how to program and do basic functions, and they're integrating it into to different courses like science, math, and where they see fit. So that's been, and we've had the Lego program, I think, for it's been several years. Before I started here, I'm not sure if Heidi says 6 years. So many of those different functional things to be able to learn that coding, and they're integrating it into other curriculum across the board.
All right, I think that's very cool. I think that it's great that we have people in other departments who are working with our education team to provide these sort of enrichments rather than having to go out and buy a curriculum, get a consultant or whatever. So thank you. That's very cool.
Ms. Haley?
Yeah, on slide 44, the technology services, I just have a question about the 2 consulting firms there that do both reports and dashboard development. I just want to understand why we have 2 doing the same thing.
Yeah. So for the Power School, that's specific to our Business Plus and our business system. WS Hall Consulting we use primarily for dashboard development for our Decision Ed platform, and Streamfind Consulting helps us specifically with some of the purchasing forms that are built within. Power School helps us with multiple, such as eSchool, Business Plus. Streamfind Consulting also helps with some of the Business Plus workflow things that we've done for customized customized forms in the past. And these are blanket POs, so we set these up every year just so we're prepared for any custom development, such as a board member change where there's signature pieces and things like that. So those things come where we have to make maybe a change on a signature, and some of that stuff comes in this as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, since Mr. Siegel brought up downtime, I just wanted to walk us down memory lane. So I don't know if you remember, but we had some significant issues with downtime. And it wasn't just internet downtime. Some of it was interruption of some of the important programs, or I don't even know what to call them, but I think it's ClassLink is what, we're pretty much dependent on ClassLink. And we had some pretty pointed discussions about that, because we're at the point now, as most school districts are, is if something doesn't work during the school day, then you're not teaching the kids. And I didn't have a question, I had a comment. Nobody's complaining to me about IT this year, and that's a good year. So I would just like to, give you a shout out and say things seem to be, cross our fingers and knock on wood, but things seem to be going very well right now. And I think
Jinx does not.
Yeah, don't. So, thanks for the work you're doing. And I never thought when I got on the board I'd be seeing a $15 million IT budget, but I guess that's the way of the world these days.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
I think we have operations, yes.
That's right. Oh, wow, you really? All right, good evening. My name is Mike Phillips, Chief Operating Officer, and I'll be presenting the operations budget this evening. We'll start out with the organizational overview. This slide is my direct reports. This is the design and construction team, facilities, logistics and support services, and lastly, operations. Run through some of the highlights. This slide under distribution, I think it's important to point out that we removed or recycled 34,579 pounds of obsolete electronics across the district, as well as 94,000 pounds of paper and cardboard. In the facilities and operations area, I just wanted to point out we're implementing ML schedules to improve our internal and external stakeholders' facilities request and rental process. And in our design and construction area, we successfully designed, bid, and awarded all 3 phases of the ESSER 2 and ARP ESSER HVAC replacement and upgrade projects. If we take a look at our overall budget summary, our salary and benefits are up slightly due to our scheduled salary adjustments. We have a large reduction in supplies, and that's primarily due to our electricity and gas contracts that are on tonight's board decrease. And under the capital line item, we have a large increase of $3 million. And that is primarily due to last year we had phase 1 of our transportation upgrades. We learned this year that we're not able to fund building upgrades out of Fund 40, out of our transportation budget. So working with finance, we moved that under Fund 20. So the $3 million includes $600,000 of phase 1 that will carry over into FY24, and then an additional $2 million and change for phase 2 of the Sterling Holly renovations, which will include the office areas, restrooms. We really have not invested any money in the transportation building in these past years, and this will definitely improve the building as well as our morale down in that area. If we take a look at our detailed contracts, on this page I just wanted to point out we're having a slight decrease in our custodial services contract, and that's primarily because we're reducing some overtime that we're carrying. We've taken a look at past years and saw that we could just reduce that. We weren't using it. On this slide, I wanted to point out our electricity and our gas decreased, $2.1 million in electricity and $915,000 in gas. I also wanted to point out that we're bringing on Forefront Power, our solar service provider. We expect to bring online 3 solar arrays in FY24. That's Fairview, Early Childhood, Marshall. Fairview will come online in November. Marshall Middle School and RISA will come online in February is the projected dates. And so we're expecting about $59,000 in costs going to Forefront. On this slide, just to point out, Helm Mechanical, our energy management services contract, that's rather large, but no variance there. The big one on this slide is our snow removal and ice removal with AA construction and Arctic snow. We do have a slight increase in our tree services. We've really spent a lot of time looking at our trees across the district, making sure that we're keeping them in good shape, lifted, and addressing fence lines when possible. And I think really that's it in our contracts. Overall, we're seeing a decrease of $2.4 million in our contracts. If we look at our Fund 60, which is our capital project budget, we are carrying $9.7 million in projects. Primarily, that's our secure vestibules at 13 schools, as well as roof replacements at Conklin, Lathrop, and Whitehead. And we've got some asphalt replacements planned at Barber, at the basketball and bus drop-off, Johnson, their parking lot and hard surface playground, Kennedy, the hard surface basketball court to the north of the school, and lastly, Lincoln, the east staff parking lot. We'll also be taking down the old coal bunker to widen the road between the west parking lot and the east drive, which our bus traffic goes through. That old coal bunker is really deteriorated, and it was an opportunity to address that. Our Fund 60 ESSER grants, we're projecting to spend $83.8 million in FY24. That will include the 6 projects that were started last year and 10 additional projects that will start this summer. Life safety, we do have some folks that are paid out of our life safety budget. Slight variance once again for salary adjustments. And under capital, we've increased that spend by $12.4 million. That is being funded by CPPRT funds. It'll be brought into the life safety fund, and it'll be funding projects that were identified during our decennial life safety. Roof replacements at Barber, Ellis, Guilford, Kennedy, and West. We'll also begin design for fire alarm replacements at Barber, Eisenhower, Jefferson, Lincoln, and RISA. Those were identified during our facilities condition assessment. The design will happen in FY24. The majority of replacement will happen in fiscal year 25. And here we do carry a couple contracts, our fire extinguisher and our fire alarm maintenance contracts, as well as Carnell Conabear, who designs any abatement projects that we have. And a return on investments is to create spaces that promote learning, collaboration, and social health, control exposure to risk, and provide support to all schools and departments. I'll take any questions.
Tim?
Back on slide 62, our general grounds and lawn mowing more than doubled.
Sorry, I apologize, I moved over that. So that is on tonight's agenda to be approved also. That we spent a lot of time developing and enhancing the scope of our general grounds. We added a block specifically for athletic fields, which will be mowing twice a week during the season and then back to once a week on off season. We really wanted to improve the overall condition and enhance the appearance of those fields. And that really goes across the board at all of our school locations. So we spend a lot of time developing the scope for landscape beds, ensuring that our high-profile areas are free of weeds and grass. So while we see a significant increase there, we really believe it's worth the investment because it's really, it's just our front porch aesthetic across the district.
Okay. And then on custodial contract services, how long does that contract run for?
We have 1 more full year and 2 option years left with GSF.
Are they able to fully staff?
They are fully staffed, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Did you have something, Ms. Pearson? No? Okay. I have a question. What's an ML schedule?
That was the software that we just the name brand of the software we're using for facilities rental requests.
Oh, that's right. Okay, thank you. And just to confirm what I heard, that Fairview would be online in February of 2024
So we're
for this. I'm talking about solar.
Projecting for the new solar arrays, Fairview will come online in November.
Or I'm sorry, November
and Marshall Middle School and Risa Middle School are projected to come online in February.
But those won't affect
They will.
this budget.
They will. They will. All 3 will come online in fiscal year 24.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense then. Okay. And then, does anybody have any? I'd like to make a comment, and I should have done this during the legal presentation. I don't know if anybody noticed, but our outside legal expenses are down almost $200,000. We, over the past few years, we've added one and then another inside legal counsel, and that was something that we had hoped to see happen. I hope that we can continue to do more of our work in-house. Obviously not all of it, but I wanted to say that was a good job making that choice that this board made and that was recommended by legal. So, because we sure talked about it a long time before we did it. Anyone else? No, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. All right, those being done, I would like a motion in a second to approve item 5C, that's the IB Curriculum Resources Reading Amplify Learning.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? I know Ms. Saltis is here. Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator call the roll.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
We're on to items that proceeded through the Governance Committee. I'd entertain a motion in a second to approve item 6A, which is a gifting agreement between Sunil Puri, 2018 DT at Rockford LLC and Rockford Public School District 205.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Anybody have any discussion on that or conversation or questions? And we know that this is a gift of the property that is on 6th Street where the drive-throughs are, right? And the idea is that the gifter will provide the services to demolish what's there. And so I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
No.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 no.
Is there a motion and a second to approve item 6B, Board Policy 6.180, Extended Instructional and Program?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
We're now on to the consent portion of our meeting, which included items previewed by the board committee chairs during committee of the whole. They are as follows: payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, construction pay request log, air travel, the RFP 23-330, Wellness Center, the IFB 2331 grounds and lawn mowing services, the fiscal year student fees for 2024, Ciance IGA resolution and addendum, recurring contract with Constellation New Energy Utilities contract, the instructional resources for co-writer and Snap and Read, instructional resource of Open Science Ed for Science 6th through 8th, Learning Partners Illinois Empower Fund, Oconomowoc Genesee Lake Residential Facility, Power School Training for Benefits, purchase of 3 used school buses from Harlem School District, the Valbrum Consulting Group, the meeting minutes from 2/14/23, which have been corrected, and from 2/28/23, contract purchase orders, settlement agreement by Canon Design, or with Canon Design, the memorandum of understanding with the REA self-contained premium pay, the workers' compensation settlement agreement, and the freedom of information log. I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And are there any items board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Tim.
7Q.
Q. Any others? I'm going to pull E and, well, no, we can vote it. I'm going to pull L as in Larry. And I think that I can get by with that. David, anything you want to pull?
This was from 7?
Yes, 7 and 8.
No, ma'am.
All righty. I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll on everything except for 7L and 7Q.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
I'll take these in order. 7L, instructional resources, co-writers, Snap and Read. So when I was reading through this one, I need a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, quickly, just when I was reading through this, I noticed that the contract at the very front of it, if you were to open the very first contract in the group, is with Addison School District, and I didn't understand what that was. So I asked that we have an explanation, just why we would have a contract with another school district and ours. And so Ms. Goldsmith has agreed to answer that question.
Okay, I'll keep this very brief. In 2021, the Student Online Personal Protection Act went into effect in Illinois, and it has statutory mandates intended to protect students' personally identifiable information when we have vendors with K through 12 educational vendors that have websites, mobile applications, online applications. So the statute requires us to have an agreement with those vendors with very specific provisions within it. Shout out to technology again, because they found a student data privacy consortium of 38 states with various stakeholders that created a template agreement that meets those statutory requirements for the agreement. So when you see that agreement in there, there's an Appendix A that allows us to adopt the terms of the vendor with another school district for the term of our agreement by simply signing one page and submitting it via email to that vendor. So the vendor is able to readily organize its agreements with all of the school districts, and the school districts are able to quickly access agreements that have already been put in place with that vendor. And just again, to shout out technology, it was in the Chicago Tribune that Chicago Public Schools at one point in 2021 denied access to educational programs for their students because they did not have this resource in place, and they were not able to quickly get agreements in place with their vendors. And Rockford Public Schools never had that problem due to the collaboration with technology and legal. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, I ask the coordinator to call the roll.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I'll now entertain a motion in a second for item 7Q, which is the purchase of 3 used school buses from Harlem.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Rollins?
Yeah, I apologize. If I thought about this ahead of time, I should have just asked the question ahead of time. This is a finance question, actually. So when we buy new school buses, at least we used to get reimbursed most of the cost of those school buses over time by the state. Is that still true?
It is. We can include it in the transportation claim, but even the purchase of used school buses, we can include in the transportation claim.
That was my second question. Okay, thanks.
Great. Ms. Pearson?
I have a question about the school buses, period. Are we still visiting the electric buses?
We didn't get it.
At this time, we were not awarded. We had submitted, but were not awarded for buses this time around. We do plan to resubmit when that opens again, but the opportunity hasn't opened.
Thank you.
Coordinator, please call the roll on item 7Q, the purchase of the 3 buses.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Excuse me. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Before we go on to closed session consent, I'd just like to say there's a whole lot of components to that consent agenda that we just voted on that we discussed in greater detail at the committee of the whole. So if anybody thinks we aren't asking questions and looking for information, feel free to view that meeting. It's on channel on YouTube, I believe. All right, we're now at the closed session consent agenda, which includes a residency hearing officer report regarding student X's family residency dispute, compensation adjustment for non-bargaining employees, the HR organizational report and addendum, and the following disciplinary items. H0062X will be expelled for 2 calendar years with alternative placement through March 13th, 2025. H0063X will be expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. 64X will be expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. No, 24-20. These are, yeah, 23-24 school year. 65X will be expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. 66X will be expelled for 2 calendar years through March 13th, 2025. 67X is expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. 68X is expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. 69X is the expulsion is held in abeyance, contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. 70X, the expulsion is held in abeyance contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year, which can be converted to a zone school EIA upon the successful completion of the refresh program. 71X is expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. 72X, the expulsion is held in abeyance contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. 73X, the expulsion is held in abeyance contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. 74X, the expulsion is held in abeyance contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. 76X, the expulsion is held in abeyance contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year, which can be converted to a zone school EIA upon the successful completion of the refresh program. 77X is expelled for the remainder of the 22-23 school year through the entire 23-24 school year. The closed session consent items for EIA are as follows: B0013, D0011, D0012, H0075, H0079, H0080, P0110, P0111, P0112, P0113, P0114, P0115, P0117, P0118. Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
So moved.
Second.
And are there any closed session and consent items board members wish to have pulled? Ms. Pearson.
10A and 10O.
Are there any others? Seeing no other lights, I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. May I take those together, or would you like them done separately?
And do them together.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion and a second for items 10A, 62X, and 10O, 77X.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We can't have any conversation or discussion, so I'll ask the coordinator to call the roll.
Ms. McCall?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Haley?
No.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 2 noes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett?
I'll keep my remarks brief this evening, but I just wanted to once again say how excited I was to celebrate 3 Golden Apple winning teachers this year. Really appreciated having multiple board members in attendance throughout the process, and just was really great to celebrate some of the true excellence that exists in our classrooms. Very, very proud of our winners, and certainly looking forward to celebrating with them formally at the banquet. We also had, I believe it was 9 people that were recognized as semifinalists, and just tremendous work in the classroom that was celebrated in an organization I think that does really good things, the Golden Apple Foundation, to celebrate excellence in education. Thank you. That ends my report.
Apologize. Next, we have an opportunity for board member comments. Mr. Siegel.
Thank you. At last week's Committee of the Whole meeting, we heard from our 3 charter schools, and we had a rather robust discussion about continuing them on, but we brought up some really interesting points of discussion. Chief among them were things like attendance? What's the population of special education students? What's the population of a diverse certified staff? And looking at those numbers, aside from the diverse certified staff, their numbers really ran on point with the schools of 205. I was struck by they're having staffs of 40 to 60% African American certified staff. And it's been, what, 10, 11 years since we've had the charters? Is that about right? Longer than that? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So schools that are given tremendous autonomy to run their curriculum as they see fit, run their programming, and we saw some really creative approaches to delivering education. Just some really, really cool and far-out ideas. And still, the one area where they are held accountable, like 205 is, in their state scores, year after year, they are still running neck and neck with us. This is not to be dismissive of the efforts to attract and retain a diverse staff. Absolutely agree with everything that was said tonight, and having read through the rest of Ms. Gianginelli's statement, I agree with it all. It's also not a way to excuse our performance. It's really to say, I think we need to be asking additional questions. We need to be thinking about education in really different ways, because year after year after year after year, whether we have schools with a very diverse staff or a not very diverse staff, our state metrics are not changing dramatically. So I appreciate the advocacy. I appreciate the efforts of this administration, and particularly Dr. Reed. These efforts are monumentally important. But I'm wondering, what other questions are we missing that are going to unlock better achievement, better growth? I mean, we heard a lot about growth from the charters, and that's great. But the bottom line is the achievement. How are we going to get to the sort of numbers that this community is going to be proud of? I don't know, and I'm really eager for a discussion that's going to include some ideas that are different and help us move that needle. And I also wanted to comment. We heard a little bit about how unpopulated the boardroom is. I want to give a shout out to the support staff of the cabinets. We regularly have a whole legal team here. We have a whole operations team here. We have a bunch of course, we're going to have our education people here. Our communications people are all over the place. So I'm not sure that people beyond the cabinet are actually required to be here, but I am super excited that they do show up and they stay for these meetings, and some of these things are marathons. So with an organization of 5,000 employees, most of whom aren't required to be here and most of them don't, I do applaud the people who do show up week after week after week. So thank you.
Thank you. So I can appreciate the efforts of the charter schools, and Dave presented a good point where it is related, where it relates to diversity. I think one thing that we have to keep in mind is that both the charter schools as well as RPS, the mainstream, for lack of a better word, it is attempting to educate in the same community that is faced with the same societal issues. So growth is what is needed to achieve. So I don't think that we should minimize growth, because in order to achieve, you need to grow. And that is progress, and it is needed, again, to achieve. So we really shouldn't have greater expectations of our charter schools than that we have of ourselves. And so as we deal with and confronted with societal issues every day, it's going to be a progress, and it's going to take more effort, more collaboration, more parental and community engagement. And as we work together, and we can definitely achieve what we need to do. In terms of equity, since I'm on this subject, and I mentioned before that I noticed equity is not a part of our mission statement. I also noticed that when you look for policies, you find more on equality, but equity is not a policy. And in order to be effective, policies must be in place, because that's how you hold the district accountable. As I was once told, there were no consequences given because there was no policy in place. So I think that that is something that we really need to consider, and perhaps as the additional, a couple of new board members join us, we can revisit that. So the bottom line and our overall effort that we are trying to achieve, there's going to have to be some policies in place to hold the district accountable. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other lights, I'm going to take you to the last item on our agenda, which is, well, it's not, it's the second to the last. Board members, the superintendent's update. If anybody had any questions or wanted to have any conversation about what was on that update. One of the really significant pieces was the tier 3 of freshmen on track. There's a lot of information on there regarding where we've gone, where we've been. I thought if anybody needed any, I mean, we can all read this, but if it stirred any questions.
I'm looking at the freshman on track rate, and I see that it's broken down by Black, Hispanic, white, and overall. And I am looking at the years 19, 21, and 22. And you see there that the Black student achievement and freshman on track has improved from 19 to 21 and even to 22, so that's good, but still you look at the Hispanic on track, that has improved as well, but by greater strides than we see with the Black achievement levels. So I just want to kind of explore at some point what is happening in the Hispanic, with the Hispanic populations before they get to high school, that their achievement is jumping so much greater than the Black achievement levels. Is it, different types of programmings in the middle school or even in the elementary school that they are able to make such great strides over the African American students or the Black students? So that's just kind of my insight there.
And so that's specific to growth. Mr. Rollins?
So I'll just throw in, you know, if you haven't gone to the Illinois State Board of Education interactive report card, you really should spend time looking at it because it's got all kinds of wonderful information. You can run all kinds of analyses. But, you know, in answer to your question, my immediate response is you should go to the school report card and look at the chronic absenteeism rates and the chronic truancy rates.
Thank you. I was drawn to the comments by the different schools on the different ways that they were going to approach their freshman students looking forward. Based on specific school needs, I thought it was interesting. East was going to focus on student surveys. Auburn was going to focus on lunchtime interventions. Guilford was going to focus on 9B freshman refresh, student cohort, and interventions, and Jefferson on assemblies and celebrations. So each school is deciding what is going to work best for their students, and you know, that will be of interest to see how they do that going forward. I do see that we're at 81% for the end of first semester. We were there last year, and we did end up at, what, 74 or 72%. So I'm hoping maybe this year, at the end of the year, will be higher. The 81% on track at the end of the first semester is encouraging. So, any other question? David? Mm-hmm.
The year-over-year on-track rates, and I guess to kind of piggyback on your point, Ms. Haley, is the progress for the black students is a positive 4%. For Hispanic, it's a negative 1%, and for the white students, it's a negative 2%, which overall would, I think, probably equal a fairly flat trend from last year to this year, year over year. Are there things that we are doing to kind of ratchet that up for the balance of this year in order to get the sort of numbers that we're looking for by the end of the year?
I think there are really, the concept that we're trying to operate under is something that John Powell has popularized, the idea of targeted universalism, which means we want to have high standards for all of our students, but when we have a group like our black students that has historically underperformed in this area, making sure our schools are being extremely introspective about the type of interventions, the learning environment, composition of the faculty and staff, and many of the factors that we've talked about to ensure that all students are getting what they need, but with a targeted universalist approach, we are saying that that should not preclude students who are furthest from the target getting more. And I think what you are seeing with the improved performance over the last 2 years is increased focus. This is something the administrative team at the district level studies every week. It's tied to our standards of practice and our, and specifically our system-wide framework, so schools are evaluated based on progress. This is a superintendent goal, so at the highest level, this is tied to my contract and continued employment in the district. So I think both the combination of focus universally on this, but also of having high standards for improvement and not being just, it's unacceptable to have our on-track rates where they are and our graduation rates where they are, and the emphasis on that coupled with schools recognizing that their African-American students across the district are furthest from that target, I think has led to some increased emphasis and focus on supporting those students. I think we could certainly bring in principals to talk about some specific ways they've done that, but I'm encouraged by the progress, but I think we all would agree that even at the 75% goal that we set for 2024 and achieving that a couple years early was nice. I think we all know that that number needs to increase significantly from that amount to truly create the kind of equitable outcomes we want for our system. So I think that targeted universalism concept is an extremely important one as we do our work moving forward. It doesn't mean lowering the bar, and it doesn't mean giving less to students who are over the bar. It means giving even more to our students who are furthest from the target.
Okay, seeing no other lights on, I'd entertain a motion, unless there's agenda items you would like added to a future meeting? No? Yes.
Just one point of clarification. Was it at the next meeting that we were going to have more discussion on the secondary grading policy, or is that going to be next month?
Do we have an
update? Do that
update?
last week, but we kind of ran out of time.
I'll use Mike's mic. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Try not to trip here. We don't have a plan to come back for a secondary follow-up. It was part of the superintendent's update review last week, so I walked through the 2 documents that were in the superintendent's written update, but there is not a plan at this point in time to come back for action or further discussion on the board floor.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions on it. Email.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
She did give a report at the last board, at the committee of the whole. It was a short one. Yeah, so I'd kind of like to hear your questions, actually. Okay, would you? Thank you so much. All right, I'll entertain a motion in a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you. Good night. Oh, wait, we're adjourned at 8:52 p.m.